She found the medical file at 7 in the morning, stuffed behind a row of architecture books on the third shelf of his home study, in a folder with no label. On the same day, she found out she was pregnant. The two facts arrived 4 minutes apart. Imani had been looking for a charger, her laptop charger, which had a habit of migrating from room to room the way objects do in houses where two people lead very separate parallel lives under the same roof. She had already checked the kitchen, the bedroom, the small reading room off the hallway. The study was the last room, and she had stood at the threshold for a moment the way she always did, because the study was Kwon Hyunwoo's room in a way that the rest of the house was not quite his, and she had learned in the 11 months of their marriage to treat it the way you treat a country whose customs you are still learning, with curiosity and careful respect. She found the charger behind the monitor, and when she reached across the desk to retrieve it, she knocked the architecture books on the third shelf, and the unlabeled folder fell, and the papers inside it scattered across the floor, and she gathered them automatically, because she was a person who gathered scattered things, and she looked at the top sheet before she understood that she was looking at something that was not for her. It was a medical report. The date on it was 14 months ago, 1 month before their wedding. The letterhead was from a hospital in Seoul she recognized as the city's premier neurological center. The patient name at the top was Kwon Hyunwoo. The diagnosis was in Korean, but she had been in Korea for 3 years, and her Korean was fluent in the particular way of someone who has learned a language in order to live inside it rather than translate it, and she understood every word. Early-onset frontotemporal dementia. Confirmed diagnosis. Prognosis. Progressive. Timeline. Accelerated deterioration, likely within 3 to 5 years. Treatment options. Limited. The summary paragraph was brief and clinical and ended with a sentence that she read 3 times. Patient has been informed and has elected not to pursue experimental protocols. She was still sitting on the floor of the study with the papers in her hands when the second thing happened. Her phone buzzed. The pregnancy test she had taken 20 minutes ago, left on the bathroom counter while she searched for the charger, had finalized its result. The app she had used to track the timer sent a notification. 2 lines. She sat on the floor of her husband's study with a medical report that told her he was dying and a phone that told her she was pregnant, and the morning light came through the study window, and the city of Seoul went about its early business outside, and she did not move for a very long time. Before we go any further, subscribe. This story will cost you something. Drop a comment. Did you see both of those coming at once? Kwon Hyunwoo was 43 years old, and he was the kind of man that cities make, not born to any particular softness, shaped by ambition and loss, and the specific discipline of someone who learned early that the world was not arranged for his convenience, and decided to arrange it himself. He had grown up in Taejun, the third son of a factory worker who had died when Hyunwoo was 14, and he had arrived at Seoul National University on a scholarship that he had treated as a contract with himself. Work hard enough, and the world will make room for you. The world had made room. He had built an architecture and urban design firm, KH Group, that had in 15 years become one of the 3 most significant design practices in South Korea, with projects in 6 countries and a reputation built on the specific quality of his buildings, which people described as austere, and then stood in front of for longer than they intended, because there was something in them that was not coldness but precision, an absolute refusal to waste any element, any space, any line. He was described in the press as cold. He knew this. He did not dispute it exactly, but he would have said if anyone had asked him directly, that cold was what people called a person who had decided not to perform warmth they did not feel, and that this was not a moral failing but a choice. He had warmth. It was specific and not general. It went to the people he had decided it belonged to. It went to his daughter, Sora. She was 8 years old, and she was the most important person in his life, and she had been so since the night she was born to a woman he had loved carelessly and who had loved him back the same way, and who had left when Sora was 11 months old, which Hyunwoo had accepted as information about his own limitations rather than hers. It went, in its careful, contracted way, to Imani. He had met Imani Adeyemi at an architecture conference in Lagos 18 months ago. She was 31, Yoruba-Nigerian, working as a structural engineer for a firm that had designed 2 of the buildings on the conference's technical tour. He had stood next to her in front of a reinforced concrete facade, and she had said, without preamble and without apparently caring that he was one of the more prominent people in the room, "The proportions are wrong." The engineer knew it and built it anyway because the client wanted the height, and you can see the compromise in the stress lines. He had looked at the building and then at her and said, "Yes, exactly that." And they had talked for 2 hours, and he had not talked to anyone at a conference for 2 hours in 11 years. The attraction had been instant, and the relationship had been slow and complicated in the way of two people who are both accustomed to knowing what they want and are unexpectedly uncertain. She had come to Seoul. He had gone to Lagos. There had been 6 months of a long-distance thing that neither of them had named, and both of them had maintained with the specific effort of people who do not want to be the first to say what it is. He had proposed in a way that she later described to her sister as utterly characteristic of him, sitting across from her at dinner in Seoul, setting down his fork, and saying without ceremony, "I think we should be married. I think this makes structural sense, and I think it is what I want, and I believe it is what you want. Tell me if I am wrong." She had said, "You're not wrong, but you could have asked instead of announced." He had said, "Will you marry me?" She had said, "Yes. Now eat your food." They had been married 11 months. In those 11 months, she had learned the grammar of him. The way he showed care through action rather than declaration, the way a room organized itself around his attention, the way he worked at his drawing board in the small hours, and she could hear the pencil moving from their bedroom and had found, to her own surprise, that she had started sleeping better to that sound. She had learned that he was not cold but exacting, that his warmth came in specific gestures rather than general overtures, that the first aid kit that appeared in her studio when she mentioned her back ached during long project reviews was not a coincidence, that the Lagos groceries, or Melissi, IRU, the specific brand of palm oil that her mother used, that appeared in the kitchen without explanation every 2 weeks were being sourced through a contact and delivered deliberately. She had learned all of this. She had thought she was learning him. She had not been told about the diagnosis. She put the papers back in the folder. She put the folder back behind the architecture books exactly as she had found it. She retrieved her charger from behind the monitor. She closed the study door. She went to the bathroom and looked at the pregnancy test for a long time. Then she washed her face, got dressed, and went to her studio. The studio was a 20-minute walk from the house in Songbukdong. She had kept it separate deliberately, because she had learned early in her engineering career that the work needed its own space to breathe. She walked the 20 minutes in the November morning air, which was cold and clear and smelled of pine from the neighborhood's trees, and she thought about nothing specific. She held everything she had just learned in a kind of suspended internal space and walked, and let the walking do what walking does, which is give the body something to do while the mind decides what it actually thinks. At the studio, she made coffee and sat at her drafting table and called her older sister, Tolu, in Lagos. "Talk to me," Tolu said, because Tolu had known Imani for 33 years and understood the specific quality of a call that began at an unusual time. "I need to think out loud," Imani said. "Don't fix anything. Just let me talk." "Okay," Tolu said. "I found something this morning," Imani said. "Something Hyunwoo didn't tell me. Something significant. Something that changes. It changes everything I thought I understood about the shape of our life." She stopped. "And this morning I also found out I'm pregnant." Tolu was quiet. "Say them separately," Tolu said carefully. "The two things. Don't let them flatten each other." It was exactly the right instruction. Imani had always trusted Tolu's instructions. "He has a diagnosis," she said. "Neurological. Progressive. He was told 1 month before we got married. He married me without telling me." She stopped. "He's going to lose. It's frontotemporal dementia. He's going to lose cognitive function. Language. First, the language centers go early with this type. Then executive function. Then everything else. It's a 3 to 5 year timeline before significant deterioration." She stopped again. "He is an architect. His entire world is held together by his ability to think in space and communicate in language and make complex structural decisions. And he knows it's going to go. He is known for 14 months and he married me and he did not tell me." Tolu breathed.
And the pregnancy, she said.
I'm pregnant, Imani said. I found out this morning. 2 lines. I don't know how far along. A few weeks, maybe. It was not. We had not explicitly been trying. It happened. She looked at the wall of her studio, where her current project drawings were pinned. A bridge. She had been designing a bridge. I'm pregnant by a man who has a fatal neurological diagnosis that he hid from me before we married. Imani, Tolu said. I know. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, Imani said. That's why I'm calling. I need to figure out what I actually feel before I walk back into that house. Because I'm going to have to talk to him. And when I talk to him, I need to know what I think, not just what I feel, because those are different things and I need both of them. Tolu was quiet for a long moment. What do you feel? She said. Imani looked at the bridge drawings. I feel betrayed, she said. I feel it's the specific kind of betrayal that comes from someone deciding something for you. He decided that I shouldn't know. He decided that I would still marry him if I didn't know, and that the marriage would be real enough to justify the omission. He decided that his version of protecting me was more important than my ability to make an informed choice about my own life. She stopped. I feel betrayed like that. Not like he lied about something small. Like he drew the map of our life and left out the largest feature and handed it to me and said, Here, navigate this. And what do you think? Tolu said. A long pause. I think, Imani said slowly, that he is the most controlled person I have ever known, and that controlled people don't hide things for no reason. They hide things because they are afraid. And that the question I need to answer, before I decide anything else, is what he was afraid of. She paused. I think he is afraid that if I knew, I would leave. And I think he may have been right to be afraid of that, which is the part one can't quite sit with yet. Tolu said nothing. You're not going to tell me what to do, Imani said. No, Tolu said. But I'm going to tell you this. Whatever you decide it for yourself. Not for him. Not out of pity or duty or the weight of 11 months. For yourself. You're allowed to do that. I know, Imani said. And call me when you talk to him, Tolu said. I don't care what time it is. I will, Imani said. Thank you, Tolu. She sat in the studio for another hour. Worked on the bridge. Let the structural calculations do what they always did, gave her nervous system something concrete and demanding to hold onto while the rest of her worked through something less calculable. Then she went home. She found the file. She found out she's pregnant. And now she's walking back through the door. Comment below. What would you say first?
He was at his drawing board when she came in.
The study door was open. She registered this, that he had the door open the way he sometimes did when he was deep in a project and wanted to feel the house around him, rather than be sealed inside his own head. He was in his work clothes, dark trousers, a plain sweater, the reading glasses he wore for detail work that he always took off the moment he noticed someone looking at him wearing them. She stood in the doorway. He looked up. The drawing board was between them, and his reading glasses were halfway down his nose, and the morning light through the study window lit him in a way that made him look, not older than she knew him, but more precisely himself. Like a photograph that has been developed more fully. You went out early, he said. I needed to think, she said. He looked at her. He did the thing he always did, the slow, complete assessment, the quality of attention that she had once found overwhelming and had come to understand as his particular form of presence. He was looking at her face the way he looked at buildings, not to find flaws but to understand what was actually there. Something happened, he said. It was not a question. She crossed the room. She sat down in the chair across from his drawing board, the chair where Sora sat when she came to the study after school to do homework while her father worked, the chair where Imani had sat many times to read while he drew, the chair that had become, she realized now, her specific place in this room. She looked at him. I was looking for my charger this morning, she said. I knocked your books off the shelf. Something moved in his face. A fractional change. There, and gone in less than a second, but she had been studying his face for 18 months and she caught it. Not fear exactly. Something adjacent to it. Something like, so it is now. He took off his reading glasses. Set them on the board.
The folder, he said.
Yes. He did not say, I can explain. He did not say, it's not what it looks like. He sat at his drawing board in the morning light and looked at her with the specific quality of someone who has been waiting for a door to open and has prepared themselves as much as preparation as possible for a thing like this, for what would be on the other side of it. How long have you known? She said. 14 months. 1 month before our wedding. Yes. And you decided not to tell me. Yes. The word landed in the room and stayed there. Tell me why, she said. He was quiet for a moment. She watched the careful machinery of him working, the way he chose words, the way he chose structural elements, for a load-bearing capacity, for truth. I was going to call it off, he said. The wedding. When I got the diagnosis, my first decision was to end the engagement. I sat with that for 2 weeks. I wrote you a letter that I did not send. He paused. And then I realized that the reason I wanted to call it off was not for your sake, but for mine. Because if I told you and you stayed, I would have to accept that I had let someone choose a life with a man who is going to need, who is going to become, a version of myself that I cannot predict or manage. And I have spent my entire life being a person who can be predicted and managed by himself. The idea of losing that, he stopped. You were afraid, she said. Yes. Not of the disease. Of what you would think of me, he said. Of what I would become in your eyes. You married someone specific. I was afraid that if you knew, even if you stayed, you would be staying for someone who no longer existed. She looked at him for a long time.
Hyunwoo, she said.
Yes. That was not your decision to make. I know. I am a structural engineer, she said. I spend my professional life calculating what a structure can hold and what will break it. You took away my ability to assess the structure of my own life. You made that calculation for me without my knowledge. That is, she stopped. She was keeping her voice steady, and it was costing her. That is a significant thing to have done. Yes, he said. It is. I am angry, she said. I know. I want you to know that I am angry before I say anything else. Before I ask you questions or try to understand anything. I need you to receive that first. He looked at her steadily. I receive it, he said. She breathed. How are your symptoms right now? She said. What are you experiencing? He was quiet for a moment, not evasive, she could see, but actually thinking about it, the way he thought about things he had been managing alone for long enough that they were still primarily internal. Small things, he said. Words that don't come when I reach for them. Not often. Once or twice a week. I compensate. I use a different word. I pause for a beat. I write it down instead. He paused. The spatial processing is still intact. My drawing is still intact. That is, it matters to me that the drawing is still there. She thought about hearing his pencil in the small hours and sleeping better to it. There's something else I need to tell you, she said. He waited. I'm pregnant, she said. The study was very quiet. He looked at her with an expression she had never seen on his face before. Not the controlled assessment, not the precise attention. Something rawer and more undefended, the expression of a man who is receiving something he wanted and was convinced he was not allowed to want. Imani, he said. His voice had changed. She would think about that changed voice for a long time afterward, the specific quality of someone saying a name as though they are understanding for the first time what it contains. We have a lot to talk about, she said. We have a great deal to figure out. But I wanted you to know. Are you? He stopped. Is this? I don't know yet what any of it means, she said. I don't know what I'm going to do, or what we're going to do, or what I need from you right now. I am telling you because it is true, and it is yours to know. She looked at him. The way the diagnosis was mine to know. The sentence landed exactly where she intended. He closed his eyes, briefly, then opened them. I'm sorry, he said, for the way I handled it, for deciding for you. That was wrong, and I know it was wrong, and I knew it was wrong when I was doing it. I know you knew, she said. That's one of the harder parts. She stood. He watched her. I'm going back to the studio, she said. I need more time. I'll come back tonight, and we'll talk. I need you to be ready to tell me everything, the full prognosis, the progression timeline, what you've been managing, what you haven't been managing, all of it. No more deciding what I can handle. Everything. Yes, he said. She walked to the study door. Stopped. The drawings on your board, she said. What are they? A pause. A school, he said. In Busan. For children with developmental disabilities. The spatial design needs to account for, he stopped. Started again. I've been trying to get the corridors right. They need to feel open but not uncontained. She looked at the drawings from the doorway. The scale is slightly off on the east wing, she said. The corridor width reads wider than it is. You'll lose the sense of openness in the actual build. He looked at the drawings. Then back at her.
Thank you, he said.
She left. He said sorry.
She said she needed more time.
And there's a baby. Subscribe, we're just getting started. She called 3 doctors that afternoon. The first was a neurologist at Yonsei Severance Hospital, a referral from a colleague whose husband had gone through a different but related neurological process 5 years ago. The neurologist's name was Dr. Park Junhee, and she was direct in the way Imani appreciated. She confirmed that the diagnosis was accurate, that the specific form of frontotemporal dementia Hyunwoo had been diagnosed with moved at the pace described in the report, and that the language deterioration was typically the first significant observable symptom.
He's an architect, Imani said.
I know, Dr. Park said. I'm one of 2 neurologists who reviewed his initial case. He asked us not to contact his family. A pause. I assumed he had his reasons. I hoped he would find a way to. She stopped. Are you his wife? Yes. Then I'm glad you called, Dr. Park said. There is a great deal you should know. They talked for 40 minutes. Imani took notes the way she always took notes. Precise, hierarchical, organized for retrieval. She learned the progression timeline in detail. She learned about the experimental protocol Hyunwoo had declined, a clinical trial in Switzerland that had shown promising results in slowing deterioration specifically in patients whose primary symptom presentation was language-based. She learned that the window for that trial enrollment was not yet closed. Why did he decline? She said. Dr. Park was quiet for a moment. He said he had things to finish, she said. He said he wanted the time he had to be productive rather than spent in treatment. A pause. I think also that enrolling in a trial in Switzerland would have made it difficult to conceal. It would have required extended absence from work. Imani thought about this. If he enrolled now, she said, what would the realistic outcome be? Slowed progression, Dr. Park said carefully. Not reversal, not a cure, but potentially significant extension of the functional period, the time during which he retains full cognitive capacity. Months, possibly longer. We are learning more with each cohort.
Thank you, Imani said.
I'll be in touch. The second call was to her OB/GYN to schedule a confirmation appointment and discuss her options in the context of everything she now knew. The third call was to her mother in Lagos, who listened to the full account without speaking and then said, in Yoruba, a single sentence that Imani had heard from her mother many times in her life, and that meant, roughly, the truth is heavy, but it is lighter than a lie. I know, Mama, Imani said. Come home when you're ready, her mother said. Not to run away, just to be held for a while. You're allowed to be held. Not yet, Imani said. There are things I need to stay for. Then stay, her mother said. And call me every day. She came home at 7 that evening. The house smelled of food he had cooked. This was not uncommon. Hyunwoo cooked with the same approach he brought to everything, methodical and focused, and the meals he produced were precise rather than elaborate, built around the specific ingredients he had learned she preferred in the year since she had moved in. Tonight, it was jollof-style rice, not quite her mother's version, never quite her mother's version, but closer than it had been the first time he had attempted it 3 months after she moved in, and she had the specific involuntary grief of knowing that he had been learning it for her, that he had been practicing it. Sora was at the table. This complicated things in the specific way that Sora always complicated things, not badly, not destructively, but fundamentally. Sora was 8 years old and had her father's eyes and a personality that was entirely her own, vivid, curious, unimpressed by anything she could not verify through direct observation. She had accepted Imani with a frank assessment of a child who has been the primary person in a single parent's life and is conducting due diligence on a newcomer. You were gone a long time, Sora said. I had a lot of work, Imani said. Appa made rice, Sora said. He made it the Imani way. He practiced 3 times last month. He thought you didn't notice, but I noticed. Imani looked at Hyunwoo, who was bringing a dish from the kitchen and whose face, at Sora's announcement, had the expression she had learned to recognize as his version of caught, a fractional resignation, warmth underneath it, the look of someone who has been seen doing something that reveals more than they intended. "Thank you for telling me," Imani said to Sora. "You should know things," Sora said, with the democratic authority she applied to all important statements. They ate. Sora talked about school, a project on bridges that she was conducting with the focus of someone who has identified an area of personal authority and intends to maintain it. She had decided, based on the fact that her stepmother was a structural engineer, that bridges were her territory, and she brought bridge facts to dinner conversations with the frequency and confidence of a small peer-reviewed journal. "Did you know," Sora said, "that the Golden Gate Bridge expands in summer?" "I did know that," Imani said. "The steel expands with heat. The bridge gets about a meter longer in summer than in winter." Sora pointed at her. "That's why I need you," she said, to no one specific. After dinner, Sora went to do homework and the house took on its evening quality. Quieter, the city outside doing its night preparations, the specific intimacy of two people in a space after a child has taken her energy to another room. They did the dishes. Side by side, which was their ritual. She washed, he dried. They had never explicitly assigned this. It had simply settled into practice, and she thought about all the things that had settled into practice in 11 months without her knowing which ones were being managed and which ones were genuine. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start from the beginning. The first symptom, what it felt like." He was quiet for a moment. Then he began. The first symptom had been 2 years ago. A word, a precise architectural term, a specific name for a structural joint he had used for 15 years that had simply not been there when he reached for it. Mid-sentence, in a meeting with 3 junior architects watching him. He had paused for 2 seconds and found a synonym, and the meeting had continued, and no one had noticed except him. He had noticed. "What did you do?" she said. "I made a note of it," he said. "I catalogued it. I started keeping a log." "Of course you did," she said, softly. Not unkindly. "The log grew," he said, "over 6 months. Specific words, always technical, always language I had built into my working vocabulary rather than everyday speech. At first infrequently, then more often." He dried a bowl, set it aside. "I went to a neurologist. I had suspected something was wrong for 4 months before I went. I needed to be sure before I let it be real. And when it was real," she said. "When it was real," he said, "I had the engagement. I had you. And he stopped. I had been alone since Sora was 11 months old. I had been alone for 7 years, and I had decided, consciously and deliberately, that I was better at being alone. That I was designed for it. That I would raise Sora well, and build the work well, and that would be enough." He set down the dish towel. "And then I met you in Lagos, and everything I had decided about myself turned out to be provisional." She looked at the soapy water in the sink. "So you were afraid," she said, "that if you told me, you would lose the one thing that had made you revise what you thought was true about yourself." "Yes," he said. "That is still not your decision to make," she said. "The revision belongs to both of us. You can't revise yourself in private and then present the conclusion." "I know," he said. "I know that now." She pulled the drain, watched the water go. "I spoke to Dr. Park today," she said. He went very still. "She told me about the trial," Imani said. "The Swiss protocol. She said the enrollment window is still open." A long silence. "Imani, I'm not telling you what to do," she said. "I'm telling you that I know it exists and that I want it to be part of our conversation. Not decided in private. Together." He looked at her. "Together," he said, as though the word were something he was testing the structural integrity of. "Together," she said. "That's what a marriage is. That's what you signed up for when you said you wanted this to have structural integrity. You can't build a load-bearing wall out of secrets." The kitchen was quiet. "The baby," he said. "Yes." What are you thinking?" She turned and looked at him directly. "I'm thinking," she said, "that I want this child. I'm thinking that the wanting of it is not conditional on everything being resolved because things may not be resolved. But I need you to understand that if we do this, if we build this, I am not doing it as someone who walked in without knowing the blueprint. I am doing it with the full schematic in front of me. Every load, every stress point, every risk.
Yes, he said.
His voice was very quiet. That means I need you to tell me everything, she said. Every symptom. Every day. When a word doesn't come, I need to know. When something is harder than it was last week, I need to know. No more private management. We manage this together or we don't manage it at all. Yes, he said again. And the trial, she said. We're going to talk about the trial. Yes, he said. She looked at him, at the careful, precise, contained man she had married in a ceremony in Lagos with her mother crying and his daughter standing beside him in a white dress looking at everything with wide, appraising eyes, and she felt the complicated thing in full, which was this. She was angry. She was frightened. She was hurt by the specific weight of being kept from something this large, and she was also, underneath all of that, still here, still in this kitchen, still looking at a face she had chosen. She had not decided everything yet. She was not pretending she had. But she was still in the kitchen. He told her everything. She said together. Subscribe because the hardest part isn't what you think. What would you do in her position? The weeks that followed were not simple. Imani had not expected them to be simple. She went to her OB appointment and confirmed the pregnancy at 6 weeks. The doctor was warm and thorough and asked the questions doctors ask, and Imani answered them honestly, including the part about her husband's diagnosis. The doctor said, "There are support resources," and Imani said, "I know," and took the materials and put them in her bag where they sat alongside 3 neurological research papers she had downloaded the night before. She told Sora about the pregnancy on a Saturday morning, sitting at the kitchen table with Hyunwoo, both of them looking at the small girl across the table who was eating toast with the concentration she brought to all tasks. "We wanted to tell you first," Imani said, "before anyone else, because you are the most important person in this house." Sora looked at her, then at her father, then back at Imani. "Is it a boy or a girl?"
Sora said.
"Too early to know yet," Imani said. Sora considered this. "I want a sister," she said. "A brother would be okay, but a sister would be better. You can share more things." She thought about it for another moment. "I'll teach them about bridges." Hyunwoo made a sound that was not quite a laugh, but lived in the same neighborhood as one. Sora looked at him. "Are you crying, Appa?" "No," he said. "Your eyes are doing the thing," she said. "Eat your toast," he said. She ate her toast, satisfied. That afternoon, Imani sat in the living room with the Swiss trial documentation spread across the coffee table and her laptop open to 3 research databases and a notepad full of her own precise handwriting, and Hyunwoo sat across from her, and they looked at it together. The trial was being conducted at the University of Zurich's Neurological Research Center. It required an initial assessment period of 2 weeks in Zurich, followed by a 6-week treatment protocol, followed by quarterly monitoring visits. The outcomes data showed a median 23% slowing of language deterioration in the treatment group. In the top quartile of respondents, the slowing was 41%. 2 weeks in Zurich, Imani said. The firm cannot. The firm can manage 2 weeks, she said. You have a deputy director who has been running day-to-day operations for 3 years and is, by your own assessment, operationally excellent. You've been paying attention, he said. I have always been paying attention, she said. That is what I do. The question is whether you have been letting me. She looked at the trial documentation. The window closes in 6 weeks. The next intake cohort after that is 18 months away. He looked at the numbers. She watched him looking, the specific quality of his attention on data, the way his eyes moved across a page, the way his hands were still when he was processing something. 23%, he said. Median, she said. With variance in the upper quartile that suggests individual factors significantly affect outcome. You read the full methodology paper. I read 3, she said. He looked at her. The expression she had been cataloging for 18 months and still found sometimes surprising, the specific quality of being seen by someone who is entirely present. I am afraid, he said. I want to be clear about that. I am not declining the trial out of some idea of dignity or stoicism. I am afraid of going and allowing myself to hope for something and having the hope be wrong. I know, she said. That is a reasonable fear. It is not, however, a good enough reason. A pause.
Tell me why, he said.
Because you have a daughter who needs you functional for as long as possible. Because there is a child coming who has not yet had any time with you at all. Because I married you without the full information and I am choosing to stay with the full information, and that means I get a say in whether we fight this. She looked at him steadily. And because 23% matters. Even median. Even if it is only months. Months matter. You, of all people, who count every structural element, you know that measurements matter.
He was quiet for a long time.
If I go to Zurich, he said. I'll come for part of it, she said. Not all. The project has a deadline I can't extend. But I'll come for the intake assessment. And Sora will stay with your sister, and we will call her every day. He looked at the coffee table covered in documentation. At her handwriting in the margins. At the 3 colored tabs she had used to mark different sections of the methodology papers. You did this today, he said. You built this today. I built it last night, she said. And this morning. I wasn't sleeping anyway. Something moved in his face. Imani, he said. Don't, she said gently. Don't say it right now. Just tell me you'll think about Zurich. I'll think about Zurich, he said. Good, she said. That's all I needed tonight. She gathered the papers into a folder, labeled it, set it on his side of the table.
He looked at it. The label says fight, he said.
I know, she said. I labeled it deliberately. A pause.
Good label, he said.
He called her the next morning while she was at the studio at 9:17, which was earlier than he normally called. I want to contact the trial coordinator, he said. I want to start the application process. She sat very still at her drafting table. Okay, she said. I want to tell Sora before we go anywhere, he said. Not everything, but that there is a medical thing her father is dealing with, and that we are handling it together. She is, he paused. She is perceptive enough to know something is being managed. I would rather she know the shape of it than fill in the shape herself. That's the right call, Imani said. And I want to, he stopped. Started again. I want to tell you something I should have said before now. She waited. I did not marry you because I needed someone to look after me, he said. I want to be clear about that. I know, given what you know now, I know it might look as though the timing was as though you were brought into, he stopped again. To manage the situation, she said. Yes. I want you to know that it was not that. When I met you in Lagos, the diagnosis was not. I had not yet, he paused. I met you before the diagnosis. The relationship happened before. The diagnosis came, and I was already in something real with you, and I was afraid of what it meant for that real thing, and I handled the fear badly. But the original thing, that was not managed. That was not strategic. She thought about Lagos, about a concrete facade and stress lines and 2 hours of conversation that had felt in the specific way of rare conversations, like being at exactly the right altitude. I know, she said. I know the original thing was real. That's actually the most complicated part of all of this, that I know you, and knowing you is what makes me certain the original thing was real, and knowing you is also what tells me you would have been capable of the rest of it. You contain both things. Yes, he said quietly. I do. So do I, she said. I contain the anger and the staying. At the same time, neither one cancels the other out. A long pause. Thank you, he said. Call the trial coordinator, she said. I'll be home for dinner. She put the phone down and sat for a moment at her drafting table with the bridge drawings in front of her. A bridge. The whole science of a bridge was the science of holding 2 things together across a gap while accounting for every force that would work against the connection, the weight, the wind, the expansion and contraction of the materials themselves under different conditions. She looked at her own drawings. Then she picked up her pencil and went back to work. He called her. He said it out loud. Subscribe because now the real story begins. Drop a comment. Are they going to be okay? The conversation with Sora happened on a Sunday. They had taken her to the Han River Park, her specific request, because Sora had identified the river as the correct setting for serious conversations, a theory she had developed after Hyunwoo had told her about Imani and the coming marriage at the river 2 years ago, and which she had apparently filed as a reliable protocol. They sat on a bench with the river doing its silver autumn thing in front of them and Sora between them eating a hotdog from a vendor she had negotiated with at considerable length. "We have something to tell you," Hyunwoo said. "Okay," Sora said. She was focused on the hotdog. "It's about my health," he said.
She stopped eating.
Looked up at him. "What's wrong with your health?" she said. "There is something going on with my brain," he said. He had thought carefully about the language. He had discussed it with Imani for 2 evenings. He was choosing every word. It is a condition that affects the part of the brain that handles language. It means that, over time, I may find it harder to find the right words. Sora looked at him very carefully. "Like a word goes missing," she said.
"Yes.
"Exactly like that." "Has it happened already?" she said.
"Sometimes," he said.
"Not often, but sometimes." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Is it going to get worse?" "Yes," he said. "Over time, it will get worse. That is why we are taking steps to slow it down. Imani found a research program in Switzerland that may help. We are going to try it." Sora looked at Imani. "You found it," she said. "I found it," Imani said. Sora looked at her father. Then at Imani. Then at the river. "Is Appa going to forget things?" she said. "Not now," Imani said carefully. "And we're doing everything we can to make sure the later timeline is as long as possible. The most important thing I can tell you is that right now, today, your father is exactly himself. And we are fighting this." "Together?"
Sora said.
"Together," Imani said. Sora looked at the river for a long moment. She was eating the hotdog again, mechanically, the way she ate when she was thinking about something that required most of her processing. "I don't want him to lose the words," she said. "He doesn't talk much, but when he talks it matters. I need the words to matter." Imani felt something tighten in her chest. "I know," she said. "Then fight hard," Sora said. "Not to either of them specifically. To the situation." "Yes," Hyunwoo said. Sora looked at her hotdog. Then at her father. Then, with the frank specificity of an 8-year-old who has decided that a moment requires a gesture, she leaned sideways and put her head against his arm. He put his arm around her. Imani looked at the river. She thought about the morning she had found the folder, the photograph hitting the floor, the 2 discoveries 4 minutes apart, the sitting on the study floor in the morning light not moving. She thought about how far the day felt from this bench, this river, this particular configuration of 3 people who had, in their different ways, chosen each other.
It was not resolved.
It was not going to be neatly resolved. There was a diagnosis and a pregnancy and a trial in Switzerland and the long, unscripted road of what comes after, which would have days that were harder than this one and weeks she could not yet see the shape of. But here on the bench, with Sora's head against his arm and the river going silver and the city behind them being exactly what it always was, she was here. All of her was here. She reached across and put her hand on Hyunwoo's knee. He looked down at her hand, then at her. She did not say anything. Neither did he. They sat in the specific language of people who have decided that the structure holds and are testing it quietly with their full weight. It held. The intake application to the Zurich trial was submitted on a Tuesday. The confirmation of enrollment came back in 4 days, which Dr. Park said was unusually fast and which Imani suspected had something to do with the preliminary report Dr. Park had sent with a personal note she was not supposed to know about, but which the coordinator had mentioned in passing as having been comprehensive and compelling. She said nothing to Dr. Park about this. She filed it under things she was grateful for. The 2 weeks before the Zurich trip were full in the way of 2 weeks that contain a great deal. Hyunwoo began a systematic documentation project, a detailed record of the current state of every active project at KH Group, the decision logic behind every major design choice, the structural reasoning for every significant call. He was building, Imani understood, a record of his own thinking while it was fully intact. An archive of himself at full capacity. She found him at his drawing board one night at 11, which was not unusual, but the drawings were different. Not project drawings, but personal ones. Studies of Sora, of the house, of the Han River at the specific angle you got from the study window. Of Imani's hands, from a reference photograph he had apparently taken on his phone without her noticing. "What are you making?" she said from the doorway. A record, he said. She stood there for a moment. Can I see the one in my hands? She said. He held it up. It was precise and specific, and more. There was something in the quality of the line that was beyond technical, a quality of attention that she recognized in his best buildings. The refusal to waste a single element, every mark carrying the maximum of what it could carry. It's good, she said. I wanted to get it right, he said. She came into the room, sat in her chair, picked up the book she had left there the previous night. Read for an hour while he drew. The pencil moved in the small hours, and she sat in its sound and thought, this is the thing I will tell this child. That the small hours were like this. The pencil, the light, the particular quality of being in the same room with someone as an act of love in itself, not performing anything, just present. At midnight, she went to bed. He followed 20 minutes later. She was not asleep. He lay down beside her in the dark and after a moment said, quietly, I am glad you stayed. I know, she said. I mean, he stopped. Started again. I mean that I understand what staying cost. What I asked of you without asking. And I am glad. And I am sorry those two things exist at the same time. She was quiet for a moment. They can exist at the same time, she said. That is one of the things I have learned from structural engineering. A material can be under tension and compression simultaneously. It is not a contradiction. It is just the physics of holding something real. Yes, he said. Sleep, she said. He slept. She lay in the dark and listened to the city outside. Seoul. Always happening. Always its enormous patient self. And put her hand on her stomach, which was just beginning to feel different, and thought about the blueprint of a life and all the elements that could not be calculated in advance, and decided that this was not a design flaw. This was just what it meant to build something real. He drew her hands. She stayed. Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. They left for Zurich on a Friday in December. The airport had the specific quality of Korean airports in winter, heated and white-lit, moving with the efficient current of 1,000 different journeys, the departure boards changing their information with the serene indifference of systems that know the world keeps going. Sora had been dropped at Hyunwoo's sister's house the night before, with her school bag and her bridge research folder and the specific resigned dignity of someone who has accepted an inconvenience under protest. Her parting words had been, "Don't come back with a French accent. It's Switzerland," Hyunwoo had said. They speak multiple languages. Then don't come back with any of them, Sora had said and walked inside. At the gate, Imani called Tolu. We're at the airport, she said. We're going. How do you feel? Tolu said. Like someone who is doing something difficult that is also correct, Imani said. Both at once. I am finding that is becoming my normal condition. That is what it is to be a grown woman, Tolu said. Welcome to the full version. I was already a grown woman, Imani said. You are a grown woman making reasonable choices in reasonable circumstances, Tolu said. Now you are a grown woman making necessary choices in unreasonable ones. It is a different category. Imani looked at Hyunwoo, who was at the window beside the gate with a coffee, looking out at the planes on the tarmac with the specific quality of stillness she had catalogued for 18 months and was still adding to. He's looking at the planes, she said. The way he looks at buildings. Like he's trying to understand the structural logic. He's an architect, Tolu said. Everything is a structure to him. I know, Imani said. That's one of the things. She paused. I'll call you from Zurich. Every day, Tolu said. Every day, Imani said. She joined him at the window. What are you looking at, she said. The loading pattern, he said. The angle of the jet bridge on the far terminal. The proportions are slightly wrong. The grade is too steep for comfortable passenger flow. Someone made a calculation error in the early design phase, or the ground subsided after construction. She looked at the jet bridge. You're right, she said. The grade is off. You can see it in the way the passengers pause halfway down. Their body language adjusts to the unexpected incline. He turned and looked at her. How long have you been able to read that? He said. Always, she said. I just don't always say it out loud. Why not? Because I was waiting to see if you were the kind of person who notices things like that, she said. And then deciding whether to tell you that I did too. He looked at her for a long moment. And, he said, you notice things, she said. You have always noticed things. That's why the hiding was so. That's why it mattered so much that you hid this. Because I know you see clearly. The hiding was a choice, not a blind spot. Yes, he said. Don't hide things from me again, she said. Whatever it costs. Don't. I won't, he said. The gate announcement came. They gathered their things and joined the line. Through the window behind them, Seoul was pale and winter bright. The mountains at the edges, the Han River somewhere south, the city going about the enormous ordinary business of being itself. She looked back at it once. Then she walked through the gate. Zurich was cold in the specific way of European mountain cities, a drier, denser cold than Seoul's, the air thin and clear and smelling of altitude and stone. The research center was in a clean modern building on the university campus, and the coordinator who met them was a Swiss-Nigerian woman in her 40s named Dr. Adeyemi Kalad, who shook Imani's hand and said, in Yoruba, "Welcome, sister," which made Imani laugh in the involuntary specific way of people who encounter the unexpected familiar in a distant place. You speak Yoruba, Imani said. My mother's from Ibadan, Dr. Kalad said. And my father is from Bern, which is why I ended up here. The world has strange hinges. She looked at Hyunwoo. You must be the architect. Yes, he said. I've seen your Busan Cultural Center, she said. I stood in the main atrium for 20 minutes. The acoustic design is extraordinary. Thank you, he said. Something in his face shifted, the fractional softening of someone receiving a genuine thing. We're going to do everything we can for you, Dr. Kalad said. And we're going to be honest about what we don't know because the research is real and the outcomes are real, but they are not guaranteed. You understand that? We understand that, Imani said. Good, Dr. Kalad said. Then let's begin. The 2 weeks were rigorous. Baseline assessments, cognitive mapping, language processing tests that Hyunwoo described to Imani in the evenings as challenging in the specific way of tests designed to find her edges, not to defeat you, but to know exactly where you are. He was methodical about it, which she had expected. What she had not expected was the quality of attention he brought to the process. Not resistant, not stoic in the performed way, but genuinely engaged, the way he was engaged by any problem that required close structural thinking. You're treating it like a design brief, she said one evening, in their hotel room with the Zurich snow outside and dinner eaten and the day's notes spread on the table between them. That is how I understand things, he said. If I map it clearly, I can work with it. If I cannot map it, I cannot build anything in response. That makes sense, she said. I know you think I am managing my emotions through the structure of the thing, he said. Are you not? She said. A pause. Partly, he said. Also partly I find that having the structure visible is less frightening than having it invisible. I've been afraid in private for 14 months. It is, he stopped. Being afraid together is different. It is heavy and different, and I find I can carry it more honestly. Good, she said. Is that enough? He said. Is what I am managing to offer, is it enough for what this requires of you? She thought about that question with the seriousness it deserved. I don't know what enough looks like yet, she said. I don't think either of us does. But I can tell you that you being honest with me, actually honest in real time the way you have been since we started this, that is the most fundamental thing. The rest is figuring out as we go. He looked at her for a long moment. I've spent my whole career, he said, trying to design buildings that are honest. Buildings that do not pretend to be something they are not, that show their structure rather than covering it, that hold what they are meant to hold, without concealment. He paused. I was not doing that with my own life. That is, he stopped. A significant inconsistency, she said. Yes, he said. You're correcting it, she said. I am trying to, he said. That, she said, is enough for tonight. The treatment protocol began in the second week. She flew back to Seoul on the 8th day. The project deadline could not be moved, and she had already extended every element she could extend. And she called him every evening, and he told her daily what the treatment was producing, what the assessments showed, what he was thinking, and what he was finding difficult. It was the most honest they had been with each other. She thought about this on the plane back to Seoul, that the crisis had done what crises sometimes do, which is strip away the performance and leave only the actual material. She did not think that made the crisis a gift. She did not believe in that particular narrative. But she did think that what was under the performance was real, and that real was something she could build with. The plane broke through the cloud cover and Seoul appeared below her, spread and lit and enormous, the Han River catching the morning light, the mountains holding the edges. She looked down at it. Okay, she said to herself. To the city, to the life that was waiting in it. Let's go. He came home from Zurich on a Saturday in January, 6 weeks after he had left. Sora was at the airport. This had been her requirement, non-negotiable, delivered to her aunt who had reported it to Imani with the tone of someone conveying a diplomatic communique. Sora will be at the airport. That is a fact and not a question. She was standing with Imani in the arrivals hall with her coat buttoned incorrectly, 3 buttons off, giving it a lopsided quality she appeared entirely unbothered by when he came through the doors with his bag over his shoulder and his face showing the quality Imani had been trying to read in the nightly calls and could now see directly. Tired, and underneath the tired, something she would only find the word for later, which was lightened. Not fixed, not certain, lightened. Sora walked to him at medium speed. Not running, because Sora did not run toward things in public. It was a dignity position she held firmly, and when she reached him, she looked up at him and said, Well, he said. The doctors say the early results are promising. What does promising mean? It means we have reason to be cautiously hopeful, he said. She considered this. Is cautiously hopeful good? She said. Yes, he said. Right now, cautiously hopeful is very good. She hugged him, quickly and with precision the way Sora did everything, fully committed, efficiently executed, then done. He held her for slightly longer than she had allocated. She let him. When he straightened and looked at Imani over Sora's head, his face had the expression she had first seen on the morning of the conversation in the study, the expression she now had a name for. It was the expression of a man who had been alone for a long time and was not alone anymore and was still, slowly, learning what that meant. She walked to him. How was the flight? She said. Long, he said. I worked. I drew. I thought about the school in Busan. The East Corridor? She said. I fixed it, he said. Show me tonight, she said. Yes, he said. They walked through the airport together, Sora between them, still eating from the bag of snacks Imani had brought, making observations about the design of the arrivals hall with the authority of someone whose father has been taking her to look at buildings since she was 3 years old. The ceiling is too low, Sora announced. It makes the space feel anxious. It does, Hyunwoo said. The designer should have known better, Sora said. Not everyone thinks about ceilings the way we do, Imani said. Sora looked at her. That's their loss, she said. Imani laughed. Hyunwoo looked at her laughing and made the sound that lived in the neighborhood of a laugh. They went through the sliding doors and out into the January Seoul air, which was cold and clear and smelled of the city, exhaust and pine and street food from somewhere nearby, and the specific mineral tang of a winter morning. Seoul was doing what Seoul always did, going about its enormous business, indifferent and magnificent, holding its millions of separate stories without preference or apology. Hyunwoo stopped on the pavement, looked at the city. I missed it, he said. It missed you, Sora said, without apparent irony. How do you know, he said. Because it always looks better when we come back to it, she said. That means it was worse when we were gone. Hyunwoo looked at her. Then, at Imani. Imani looked back at him. There was, between them, the thing that had been there since the kitchen in November. The anger that had become understanding, the understanding that had become the choice to stay, the choice that had become, through Zurich and the drawings at midnight, and the phone calls in the evening and the honest words in the hotel room with the snow outside, something she could finally name. Not resolved. Not finished. Not without the weight of everything they were still carrying, and would continue to carry. But a structure. Real and load-bearing, built with the full schematic visible, every stress point accounted for, every element doing the work it was designed to do. Let's go home, Imani said. Yes, he said. They walked to the car. He came home. Sora said the city missed him. And there is still everything ahead, the pregnancy, the diagnosis, the daily work of a life that holds all of it. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to know that staying is not weakness. And tell me in the comments, what do you think they named the baby? 3 months later, on a Tuesday morning in April, Imani stood in the doorway of the study. The study had changed. Not dramatically, the architecture books were still there, the drawing board was still at its angle, the specific quiet of the room was intact. But there was a chair she had not put there, positioned slightly to the left of his board at an angle where someone seated in it could see both the drawing and the person drawing. And on the shelf where the unlabeled folder had been, there was a small framed drawing. Her hands, the one from the archive he had been building, mounted and placed with the careful deliberateness of someone who has decided that something should be permanent. He was at the board. He looked up. "The new chair," she said. "I moved it from the reading room," he said. "You come in here in the evenings. I thought you should have a better angle." She looked at it. Then at the framed drawing of her hands. "When did you frame it?" she said. "Last week," he said. "I wanted it to be permanent. The record. I want the permanent record to include this." She sat in the new chair. It was a good angle. She could see the drawing board clearly and the window with the Han River view and his face in profile as he worked. "I have the 20-week scan on Thursday," she said. He set down his pencil. "I will be there," he said. "I know," she said. "The measurements looked good at the last one," he said. "The structural," he stopped. Looked at her. "Did you just describe our child as structurally sound?" she said. "I was going to say the developmental markers were." "You were absolutely going to say structural," she said. A pause. Then, from him, the full laugh, rare and quick and luminous, the one that came without diplomatic preparation, the one that had been in the neighborhood of its full self for months now and had, sometime in January, arrived. She looked at him laughing in the morning light of his study with the architecture books and the drawing board and the framed picture of her hands, and she thought about the morning she had found the folder, the two discoveries 4 minutes apart, the sitting on the floor in the light. She thought about how far. She thought about her mother saying the truth is heavy, but it is lighter than a lie. She thought about Sora saying fight hard, with her Hadiak and her river and her 8 years of absolute confidence in the people she had decided to count on. She thought about Toulouse saying decide for yourself. She thought about Dr. Khalad saying the world has strange hinges, and the way Hyunwoo had looked when a stranger told him his building had changed how she heard sound. She thought about the pencil in the small hours and the drawings of her hands and cautiously hopeful, and a school in Busan for children with developmental disabilities and east corridors that needed to feel open but not uncontained. She thought about what her mother had said, that last time on the phone. You are allowed to be held. She was held. Not perfectly. Not without the weight of the diagnosis and the long road ahead, and the days that would be harder than this one. Not without the knowledge that the blueprint they were building on still had unknowns in it, sections of the design that would have to be worked out as they went. But held by a structure she had helped design with her full knowledge and her full choice. That was enough. That was, in this specific morning in April with the Han River somewhere south, and the baby moving and the pencil back on the board and Sora's voice coming from the hallway demanding breakfast with the irreducible authority of someone who knows she is essential, that was more than enough. Structural, she said. I was going to say developmental, he said. You weren't, she said. I was not, he agreed. They sat in the study. The morning went on around them. Seoul held the shape of the place. And this, the two of them, the laughter, the drawings, the honest room, is exactly where we leave them. The folder, the test, the conversation, the fight, the return. The chair moved to the right angle. This is the whole story. Staying is not the ending, it is the beginning of the real thing. Subscribe, we have more of these. Share it with someone who is in the hard middle of something real. And tell me in the comments, what do you think the baby's name will be? The first time a word went missing in front of her, it was a Thursday in May. They were at dinner, the three of them, the usual Thursday configuration, Sora explaining a new bridge fact she had sourced from a documentary she had watched at her aunt's, Hyunwoo listening with a patient precision he brought to all of Sora's pronouncements, Imani eating and thinking about a load calculation she had been wrestling with all afternoon. The Millau Viaduct, Sora said, is taller than the Eiffel Tower. The pylons, I mean, not the deck. The pylons. Correct, Imani said. 343 meters at the tallest pylon. Sora pointed at her. You already knew that. I did. Appa, Sora said. Did you know that? He opened his mouth. She watched. She had been watching, in the careful peripheral way she had developed over the months, not staring, just present to it, and she saw the fractional pause. The reach for something that took a beat too long. Yes, he said. The viaduct. The height is remarkable given the span. She heard it. The small reroute. He had found the idea, and built around the word that had not come immediately, the specific architectural vocabulary of a man who has learned to use a different load path when the primary one is momentarily blocked. Sora didn't notice. She moved on to the next bridge fact. After dinner, when Sora was in her room and the kitchen was clean, Imani stood at the counter and said quietly, Milao. Hyunwoo was putting a dish away. He stopped. Milao, she said again. That was the word. Say it. Milao, he said. Good. She looked at him. I'm not testing you. I'm making sure you have it back. Do you have it? Yes, he said. It came back. It was 3 seconds. 3 seconds is still fast, she said. It used to be immediate, he said. I know. She looked at him. We log it. That's what we agreed. Is it in the log? I'll put it in tonight, he said. Okay, she said. And tomorrow we call Dr. Park and report it. That's the protocol. Yes, he said. She put a hand on his arm. Brief. The specific shorthand they had been developing. Not consolation, not pity, just, I'm here. This is real. We are managing it together. It's one word, she said. One word on a Thursday in May. We knew this would happen. We prepared for this. Preparation, he said, is different from the actual event. Yes, she said. It always is. That's why we prepare, so the actual event doesn't find us empty-handed. She removed her hand. Log it. Call Dr. Park tomorrow. Show me the Busan drawings tonight. That's the plan. He looked at her for a long moment. The Busan drawings, he said. The East Corridor, she said. You said you fixed it. I fixed it, he said. Then show me, she said. They went to the study. He showed her the drawings. She stood at his shoulder and looked at the revised East Corridor and said, That's it. That's the right width. You can feel the openness just from the plan view. He said, I thought the same thing. She said, Write that down. That instinct. Write it down while you have it exactly. He picked up his pencil. She sat in her chair and watched him write. The pencil moved. The city was outside. The baby was somewhere in the vicinity of her ribs, doing the thing it had started doing in the evenings, a small insistent presence that she had not found a way to be unsurprised by yet. She thought, This is a Thursday in May. This is what it looks like. One word missing and found again, and a drawing and a plan and 2 people in a room who have decided that honesty is the primary load-bearing material and are building accordingly. She thought, This is enough. This specific Thursday is enough. Sora found out about the full diagnosis in June. Not because they told her, they had agreed to tell her more as she was ready for more, incrementally, in the way of parents who respect a child's capacity without rushing it. She found out because she overheard a phone call. Hyunwoo had been talking to Dr. Park in the study. The door was almost closed. Sora had come home from school quietly, as she sometimes did when she was thinking about something, and she had been in the hallway before either of them knew she was there. Imani found her in the kitchen afterward, sitting at the table with her school bag still on, her bridge research folder open but unread, looking at something inside herself that was too large for her face to hold all of. Sora, Imani said. Sora looked up. How much to do here? Imani said. A pause. Then, enough. Imani sat down across from her. Ask me what you want to ask, she said. Sora was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had the specific controlled quality of someone managing something large and not wanting to be seen managing it. She had, in this way, her father's qualities precisely. Is he going to forget us? She said. Imani looked at her. I don't know, she said. I want to tell you something more comforting than that, and I'm not going to, because you deserve the true answer. The disease, over time, affects memory. We don't know exactly how or when. What I can tell you is that right now, today, your father knows exactly who you are and loves you exactly as he always has. and that we are doing everything that can be done to make right now last as long as possible. Sora looked at her folder. I've been keeping a list, she said, of things I want to make sure he knows. Things I want to tell him. Bridge facts and school things and things.
She paused.
In case. Imani looked at this 8-year-old child who was keeping a list of things to say to her father in case, and felt something move through her that she did not have a clean name for. Not grief. Not only grief. Something that also had love in it and admiration, and the specific vertigo of looking at a person who is being more honest about something hard than most adults manage. Can I tell you something? Imani said. Yes, Sora said. Your father has been doing the same thing, she said. He is building a record. Drawings, notes, the logic behind his work, the things that matter to him. He is doing exactly what you are doing, making sure the things that should be kept are kept.
She paused.
You got that from him. That quality. The way you take the things that matter and find a structure for them. Sora looked at her. Does he know I'm doing it? She said. Not yet, Imani said. Do you want him to?
A pause.
Yes, Sora said. I think we should do it together. Compare lists. Make sure we're not missing anything. Imani looked at her. I think that, she said, is exactly the right idea. That evening, after dinner, Sora brought her folder to the study. Hyunwoo was at his board. She put the folder on the table and said, I've been keeping a record too. I want to combine it with yours. He looked at the folder, then at his daughter. Then, he moved his chair to make room for hers beside him. Show me what you have, he said. She sat down. Open the folder. They bent over it together, father and daughter, in the lamplight of the study, and Imani stood in the doorway and watched them and did not go in.
Some rooms you leave as they are.
Some things are complete the moment they happen. The baby was born in August. A girl. Sora had requested a girl and had received the universe's cooperation on this matter with the specific satisfied vindication of someone whose predictions consistently prove accurate. She was born at 4:42 in the morning, which Imani had not expected. She had expected the middle of the day, based on no medical evidence whatsoever, simply because her own internal schedule tended toward afternoons, and she had assumed continuity. The baby had different ideas. She arrived in the pre-dawn with the absolute conviction of someone who has been ready for a while and is done waiting. Hyunwoo had been there for all of it. He had held Imani's hand through the hours and said very little, which was what she needed. Presence rather than performance. Someone steady at the exact coordinates. She required steadiness. When the baby was placed in his arms for the first time, his face did the thing she had seen only a handful of times in 18 months, the full, unmanaged version of himself. Nothing held back. The expression of someone receiving something that undoes every careful structure they have built around themselves and reveals the person underneath who has wanted, simply and completely, exactly this. He looked at the baby. Then, at Imani. She has your hands, he said. Imani looked at her daughter's hands, which were miniature and absolute, and curled around Hyunwoo's finger with the grip of someone staking a claim. She does, Imani said. I'll draw them, he said. I know you will, she said. He looked at the baby for a long time. The hospital room was quiet. Outside, Seoul was beginning its early preparations for the day. The light changing somewhere beyond the window, the city stirring. What are we calling her? He said. They had discussed names for weeks. They had a list. They had not fully decided. Imani looked at her daughter. Era, she said. It meant something in both Yoruba and Korean. In Yoruba, a form of the divine. In Korean, of the sea. She had found this months ago and kept it. Era Kwon Imani Adeyemi. She looked at him. If you agree. He said it quietly. Era. The word in his mouth, tested for its weight, its fit, its structural logic. Yes, he said. That's the right word. She took her daughter back. Held her against her chest where the heartbeat was. Era Kwon. 8 pounds and 4 ounces of the future. Already gripping things and making her opinions known. Welcome, Imani said quietly. We have things to show you. The morning came through the window. The city came up to meet it. And in a hospital room in Seoul, a family that had been built from a crisis and a choice and a medical file and a pregnancy test and a drawing of hands and a school in Busan and a list of things to remember and a trial in Zurich and a bench by the river and a chair moved to the right angle. That family sat in the first morning of a new thing and breathed and held on. 6 months after Era was born, Imani sat in the study on a Sunday morning while Hyunwoo slept and Sora was at a friend's house, and the baby was in her crib making the small sound she made when she was deciding whether to wake up properly or return to sleep. The study was the same and different. The drawing board was the same. The architecture books were the same. The framed drawing of her hands was the same. But there was now a second framed drawing beside it. Era's hands, 3 days old. The miniature grip and the specific curve of the fingers that Hyunwoo had drawn from memory and from photographs with the focused attention of someone who has decided that this is the most important drawing he will ever make. Beside that, in a frame Sora had chosen blue because Sora had opinions about frames was a drawing Sora had done herself. Not architectural, not precise in the technical sense, but precise in its own way. 3 figures standing at a window, the river visible below them, a small shape in the arms of the tallest figure. She had given it to them on a Sunday 2 months ago, setting it on the drawing board with the authority of someone making a permanent installation. "It's us," she had said. Unnecessarily. "I see that," Hyunwoo had said. "The river is accurate," Sora had said. "I checked the angle." "You did," Imani had agreed. "You should frame it," Sora had said, already moving toward the kitchen. "That's a fact, not a suggestion." They had framed it. Imani sat in the study now with her coffee and looked at the 3 frames on the shelf, her hands, Era's hands, Sora's drawing of them at the window, and thought about what her sister Tolu had said on the phone the previous week, when Imani had been describing the ongoing logistics of their life, the quarterly Zurich visits, the word logging protocol, the drawing archive, the nightly review of how the day had gone that she and Hyunwoo had built into their evenings, 30 minutes, no exceptions. "It sounds like a lot of work," Tolu had said. "It is a lot of work," Imani had said. "Are you okay with that?" She had thought about it honestly. "I think," she had said, "that all of it, the work, the management, the protocol, the log, it would be unbearable if I had walked into it without the full picture. If someone had handed me this life, without the schematic. But I built this. I chose this with everything visible. That changes the weight of it. It doesn't make it lighter. It makes it mine. It's the weight of something I designed, which is different from the weight of something that happened to me." Tolu had been quiet for a moment. "That," she had said, "is the wisest thing you have ever said to me." "I had good material to work with," Imani had said. Sitting in the study now, she thought, yes, that is the whole of it. You cannot always choose the material. You can choose what you build with it. She heard Hyunwoo on the stairs. His particular pattern of movement, which she had learned so thoroughly that she could identify his location in the house by sound alone. He appeared in the study doorway in yesterday's clothes and his reading glasses, which he had apparently slept in, which was not unusual, and he looked at her in the chair and at the coffee she was holding and at the 3 frames on the shelf. "You're up early," he said. "Era woke me at 5, she said. She decided 5 was a reasonable hour, and I disagreed, but she was unmoved. She has your position on schedules, he said. She has your stubbornness, Imani said. He came into the room, looked at the shelf. Sora's drawing is crooked, he said. By 1 degree, Imani said. I know. I've been deciding whether it matters. It matters, he said. Architecturally, she said. Emotionally, it is exactly right. He looked at the drawing. At the 3 figures at the window, the river below, the small shape in the tallest figure's arms. Yes, he said. Emotionally, it is exactly right. He straightened the frame, anyway. 1 degree. Then stood back and assessed. Better, he said. Both things can be true, she said. Yes, he said. He sat down at his drawing board, picked up his pencil. From the room above them, Era decided that sleep was finished and made this known with the specific conviction of someone who has strong opinions about morning. Imani set down her coffee. I'll get her, she said. Bring her down, he said. I want to draw her hands again. They change every week. She stopped at the door. Hyunwoo, she said. What was the word yesterday? The one that took a moment. A pause. Cantilever, he said. It came back in 4 seconds. For seconds, she said. In the log. In the log, he said. Good, she said. She went upstairs, collected her daughter, who was indeed done with sleep and had opinions about it, carried her back down through the Sunday morning house. The city outside was waking up around them, Seoul. Always enormous, always going, always holding its million separate stories with the patient indifference of something that has been doing this for a very long time. She brought Era into the study. He turned from the board. Era looked at him with a focused scientific attention she had been directing at everything since she arrived in the world, as though she was systematically cataloging her environment and had so far found it adequate. Good morning, he said to her. She made a sound that was not a word, but had the quality of one. That's a good sign, Imani said. She's been practicing. He held out his hands. She transferred Era to him with the practiced ease of 8 months of daily repetition. He held his daughter and looked at her face, and she looked back at his with her mother's watchful attention and her father's quality of stillness and whatever she was building for herself that was already entirely her own. Cantilever, he said to her quietly, in the way he had taken to saying words to her, the words that had been difficult, rehearsed in her presence, let loose into the air between them. Cantilever, a structural element that extends beyond its support, held by the counterweight of what is fixed. It looks like it should fall. It does not fall. Era looked at him. She made another sound, reaching for something, the way they all did. Imani sat in her chair. Hyunwoo held his daughter, and the pencil was on the board, and the frames were on the shelf, and the river was somewhere south of them, and the morning was completely and entirely what it was. Present. Honest. Held. 8 months into Era's life, Hyunwoo completed the Busan school. It was a Tuesday in spring when the final drawings went to the client, and Imani knew before he told her, because she heard the specific quality of silence from the study that followed a major completion. Not the working silence, not the thinking silence, but the still silence of someone who has set something down and is standing at the edge of what comes next. She knocked on the open door. He was standing at the window. The Han River one. The particular posture she had catalogued the first weeks of their marriage, hands in his pockets, looking at the water, but different now. Not the internal argument. Something more settled. You sent it, she said. Yes. How does it feel? A pause. Like something I built with everything I had at full capacity, he said. I don't know when I'll have that again. Full capacity, on a project of this complexity. I wanted to make this one count. She crossed to the window, stood beside him. The river was doing its spring thing. A lighter silver than winter, moving with slightly more purpose, the city's bridges carrying their usual traffic across it with the ordinary competence of structures that have been doing their specific job for so long the job has become invisible. Tell me about the East Corridor, she said. The scale is right now, he said. 3 meters 50. Wide enough to feel open, narrow enough to feel held. The children who will use it, their world is already large and sometimes overwhelming. The corridor should feel like someone thought about them, like the space was designed for their specific experience of being in a space. It will, she said. I can tell from the plans. You can tell, he said. I can always tell, she said. From the plans. You can feel the intention in a well-designed plan. That corridor has intention. He looked at the river. I want to see it built, he said. I want to stand in that corridor when it is finished and see if it does what I intended. When is the build timeline? She said. 18 months. Maybe less if the contractor moves efficiently. 18 months, she said. The Zerk results at the last check were stable. The trial coordinator said stable is better than we had reason to expect. I know, he said. You will stand in that corridor, she said. I will be there. Era will be there. Sora will tell us 17 facts about school architecture. He turned from the window. You've already planned it, he said. I plan things, she said. That is what I do. I look at the structure, and I work out what it needs to hold, and I plan accordingly. She looked at him. You are a structure I have assessed fully and planned for. You should know that. Something moved in his face. The full version. Nothing managed. I know, he said. That is, he stopped. Started again. That is the most extraordinary thing anyone has ever said to me. It's a structural metaphor, she said. Don't be overwhelmed by it. I am somewhat overwhelmed by it, he said.
Good, she said.
File it in the record. The things that mattered. He looked at her for a long moment. I love you, he said. Simply. Directly. The way he said the things he meant, without ceremony, without preparation, because the preparation was in the meaning, and the meaning was complete. She had heard him say it before. They had been saying it for months now. The quiet architecture of a marriage that had decided to be honest. But this version, today, on the day the Busan school was sent, standing at the river window with the spring light and the completed drawings behind them and everything they had been through and everything still ahead, this version had the quality of his best buildings. It showed its structure. It held what it was meant to hold. It did not waste a single element. I love you, she said. The river went on below them. The school was in Busan waiting to be built. Era was somewhere in the house with the babysitter, conducting her systematic assessment of the world. Sora would be home in an hour with a new bridge fact and strong opinions about dinner. And they were here. Present. Honest. In a room they had built together from real materials, with the full schematic visible, every load accounted for, every stress point known. It held. It would keep holding. That, at the end of the day, and the beginning of every day after it, was the whole of what they had needed.